mark to the low $3. A company with its stock slashed by 1/3 of its value in just over 60 days. If it keeps on this trend, the World Stock Exchange may be operated with a company that has no value. What happens then? Well, if you remember before our break, we were waiting for Luc-Onel van der Ver, the CEO of the World Stock Exchange, to finally make his appearance. In the meantime, we continued our interview with both the AVIX representative and the customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange. While the AVIX representatives continued to answer my questions, the only responses I received from the World Stock Exchange customer service representatives was that we had to leave the area immediately and to cease our interviewing, even though I noted that I was a reporter for a real-life news media organization. Luc-Onel finally appeared 15 minutes after our first request for him to appear. We then put some strong questions to him. We asked him, "Luc, what is your comment on the formation of AVIX?" No direct response was received. So I then asked, again, "Please comment on the allegations of companies banning for association with the competing stock exchange." Still no response. We continued with, "If you do not wish to comment, we will report accordingly." Luc-Onel finally responded that I have every right to ban any person soliciting, spanning, or approaching my customers on my land or at my doorstep. It is extremely unprofessional, and I have sufficient evidence of such actions. The person will be banned. We also received an instant message from the World Stock Exchange customer service representative. "Joe, I think this conversation would fit instant message better," in which we responded, "I am a media reporter, no instant messaging." The next statement completely blew me away. We received an instant message from the customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange, whom stated that if we continue with the interview, we would be sued. We informed the customer service representative that we were a media agency, and that we have the right to report the story, and that we would not be conducting the interviews on the World Stock Exchange property. The customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange then continued in saying that if we used any photo or text of the World Stock Exchange or himself within the interview, we would be sued. Now I ask you, is the World Stock Exchange not a public stock exchange? If this is the case, why would they threaten or sue a reporter covering a story outside of their location? Why would they not want me to continue with the interview? My next question was based on the recent media reports that the real-life NASDAQ has shown some interest in possibly setting up a stock exchange within Second Life. I asked the question to both Luc and AVIX, what will happen if the NASDAQ comes into Second Life? Luc-Onel replied, "Nothing. It is extremely unlikely that they will enter Second Life in the near future. They wouldn't do that because it's not professional." Now think about that last statement from the CEO of the World Stock Exchange. He says that the real-life NASDAQ stock exchange will not come into Second Life because, and I quote, "Nothing. It is extremely unlikely that they will enter Second Life in the near future. They wouldn't do it because it's not professional." The CEO of the World Stock Exchange does not think that the stock exchange market is professional. Mind you, the World Stock Exchange has no problem in continuing to solicit listings for their exchange, receiving millions and millions of lindens from investors for those companies, but is not professional? What happens if the head of the NASDAQ made a similar statement? What confidence would that leave in the investors' minds? I continued in asking Luc-Onel for his comment on the fact that his customer service representative had threatened us with a lawsuit if we continued the interview or included him within it. Luc-Onel replied that his comments were the only official comments, even though we continued to receive instant messages from the customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange, while this person stood beside us, clearly identified as a World Stock Exchange employee, complete with the World Stock Exchange badge. At this point, a security official for the landowner appeared, Mark Locke. We continued with Luc-Onel. "Well, if a person is listed as a World Stock Exchange customer service representative, please comment on the actions of someone whom is listed in association with your organization, whom has threatened a journalist with a suit for interviewing in a public place. Please comment." Luc-Onel replied, "I'm not asked by a World Stock Exchange representative, but he is free to represent his own opinions. Remember, this person is clearly identified as a customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange." I continued to receive instant messages threatening my continued coverage of this event. I responded in regular chat with, I am a reporter for a media organization. As I have asked before, I do not conduct interviews by instant message to ensure that all parties have a clear understanding of what's being communicated. I noted my rights as a reporter. The customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange replied with, do you have the permission from the SIM owner and all parties involved? No. And Second Life is not in the United States. It does not follow the United States Bill of Rights or Constitution. Now, the last time I checked, Second Life was based in the United States, San Francisco. The next thing I found was that I was standing in front of the sljoe.com studio in Palm Vegas region. I then quickly found out I was banned from the World Stock Exchange. A reporter being banned from reporting on a stock exchange who claims that they are an open stock exchange. We contacted Mark Locke, the security contact for the landowner. We also contacted Lou Connell to request the interview to be continued. 10 minutes passed, then 15 minutes. Finally, we received a strange request from Mark Locke, security for the landowner. We had to display our photos to him so he could approve them. We informed him that this was not the regular procedure for a journalist. However, we soon found that this meant we would not be able to continue the interviews. We made an unprecedented step of uploading the thumbnails for the photos that we took to a panel and invited Mark Locke to the sljoe.com studio to view them. We informed him that our news agency complies with the Linden Lab terms of service and would blur the faces of those whom we did not receive releases. Finally, after 25 minutes of being ejected from the event location, we were allowed to return only to find that no one was anywhere in sight. Quite interesting that a reporter is removed just long enough so that the problem is swept under the carpet, so to speak. About an hour later, we contacted Lou Connell and asked him if he had any further comment on the actions of his customer service representative. His response was this: "This is Second Life. I have no control over what my employees say." He continued with stating that we should have already received a retraction from the customer service representative for the World Stock Exchange. We continued with asking the customer service representative for additional comment. We informed him that we had spoken to his boss, Lou Connell, whom had stated that a retraction should be coming our way. Instead, the response was the following: "Well, guess what? I am not going to give you that retraction. You have violated my rights, so you can get your story. See you in court. Don't post anything concerning me or I'll sue you. Bottom line, no negotiations." Perhaps this is one of the first times in my journalistic career I responded with, "You have me speechless. Wow, have a great day. Never expected to be doing a story on the World Stock Exchange." While maybe the best indication of the future of the World Stock Exchange was their prominent departure from the very prominent location across from the World Trade Center towers. Was the rent too high? Or perhaps this gathering from AVIX representatives forced the World Stock Exchange to retreat to a new property, which it makes it impossible for any kind of protest to occur. Now I ask you, would this be what you would expect from, say, the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ? Well, we understand that Second Life is still maturing. We would assume that the head of the stock exchange would think that the stock exchange was professional prior to allowing millions and millions of Linden dollars to be invested. What kind of security does this give to the investors? I also ask Linden Labs, what happens if Hope Capital Limited and the World Stock Exchange keeps going in their downward stock slide? They could go bankrupt. What would happen with all the investors' money? Perhaps Linden Labs should take a closer look about how the perspectives of protecting millions and millions of Lindens invested. We're not talking about one business going out of business, but a stock market whose financial impact is vast. Perhaps Linden Labs should look at having the stock exchanges and banks posting a bond or security prior to allowing such ventures to begin, for the protection of the public. I only hope that this does not put a bad taste in the NASDAQ's mouth, and that they continue with the possibility of coming into Second Life. At least we know that they have the professionalism, accountability, and resources to run a stock market that protects and grows investors' confidence. Well, Second Life as nothing more than simply a game. But when you start businesses such as banks and stock exchanges, accountability is required due to the money taken in trust. If you're wondering what happened to the old location of the World Stock Exchange, we find it quite fitting that the AVIC Stock Exchange has seized this opportunity to build a huge stock exchange in the old location of the World Stock Exchange. We find this very fitting end to our story. This is SL Joe for SLJoe.com. You take care now.